all have resolutions that we want to do. Is there anybody that has a fun resolution that they tried to do and messed up?
I have no idea.
You have no idea? Did you try reading your Bible and you failed? Hey, tried saving money and failed? I tried losing weight and I gained it back. It's not working. However, adults and students need help when it comes to following Jesus. Today we're going to find some advice on the adventure from a little book in the Old Testament called Proverbs. This strange little book we don't read like a normal book. It's not a story. It's a collection of wise sayings similar to what you find in fortune cookies at a Chinese restaurant, but these were inspired by God. And if you're hoping to read your Bible more this year, I want to challenge y'all to read a chapter a day each month in Proverbs. There's only 31 chapters, a chapter a day, 31 days, you're done with it. So, you read one chapter and be done in a month. The verse we'll be reading tonight comes from the near beginning of it in chapter 3. Let's read this verse, these two verses, and see what they have to do with following Jesus and the strange game we just played. So, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Alright. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. So, in there, you had the option of either doing it on your own or having help. In life, we can either do it on our own or we can ask Christ for help. One of the two. You can do it on your own and you can win way up out west, or you can do it with Christ and be closer. You will struggle, but you will end up better off with Jesus helping you. You don't have to be a genius to understand this verse at all, but it does take some work to obey Him. It starts off by saying to trust God. With what? What do we trust God with? It's up there. What does it say trust God with? Your heart. All of your heart. That means you really trust God. The idea expands into do not depending on your own understanding. What would be your own understanding? By doing it on your own? Not trusting God for it. So I'm going to break right there for a minute and tell y'all something with trust that my family has dealt with over the past 2 years. Some of y'all might know the lady that raised me passed away last year. Well, before she passed, my brother, he went out to the river just to get some peace and quiet, and he heard God say, "Hey, do you trust me?" And he says, "Well, God, what do you mean?" "Yeah, I trust you, but what do you mean?" He's like, "Do you trust me?" He was asking my brother if he trusted him with the well-being of his mom that was on life support, wasn't doing good at all. So Jonathan said, "Yes, I trust you." And what happened? She was ultimately healed. She didn't get to come home from the hospital, but instead she went on to heaven. She died, and we don't understand that. We can't comprehend it or wrap our minds around it, but she's no longer suffering with all the stuff she was dealing with. Well, this past weekend, I buried my uncle, which is the lady's husband. Same thing happened. My brother Jonathan's at the hospital with him, and he goes to walk outside and get a fresh breath of air, and he hears that voice again. "Hey, do you trust me?" And he's like, "Well, it's a pretty loaded question this time because of what happened last time, but what do you mean?" He says, "Do you trust me to heal him, to save your father?" Well, he ended up passing away as well. We buried him this past Saturday. But my brother trusted him. He put his full trust that Jesus was going to take care of the situation. We went through brain cancer with him and a bunch of situations that we didn't want to deal with, but we dealt with because he was family. But we trusted God to pull us through that situation. So, these are some things you can probably relate to. How many of you have felt confused about something at some point since school has started? Has anybody felt confused about something? You have? School in general? Jeremiah? You felt confused about school?
Not about school.
Not knowing who your teacher was going to be that day, your mom or your dad?
Not about school, but I've been confused a lot.
Been confused a lot? Okay. Could have been a lesson from a teacher. Might have been a book that you've read. It could have been simply trying to understand a story from your friend that they were sharing. Sometimes I get confused trying to figure out what students are saying when they tell me about their day. Has that ever happened? If you're with a group of people and they all start talking and you're trying to decipher something, And next thing you know, Mary Jean over here's got an issue, but it was actually Billy Bob over here that was telling you the story and you got them confused. That's happened to me before. There are a bunch of slang terms that you will use without thinking that I have to illustrate. And the third part of this, it says to what? So it says to trust the Lord your God with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. And what's the next one after that? What do we do after depending on him and not our own understanding? What's the next one that it says for us to do up there? Seek his will. This means that we learn that we can all know about what God wants us to do and try to do that. It's much easier to describe than do. That's why we're here studying the Bible and helping each other live it out. Finally, this ends with God showing us which path to take. So, y'all were in there with the 3 blind mice, and you had people directing you which path to take, right? But some of y'all could see the path before you did it. Some of you couldn't. But once the blindfold was put on, you were spun around and you started walking. It was a little bit confusing, wasn't it? Especially when someone said left and actually right, or right and then your left. That's similar to how you might feel when you come to church. Not yet, Ashlyn. It might feel how when you come to church and learn about how to live like Jesus from the Bible and you just don't understand it. I know sometimes I don't understand it, even at my age, and I'm an adult, and I don't understand sometimes what the pastor's preaching about. Then you go into your everyday life with your family, your neighbors, your school, your friends, trying to figure out how to put all of this into practice in the real world from what you've heard at church and how to apply that to that. This is why we're instructed not to depend on our own understanding. Sometimes it's not going to make sense. We have to accept that. We don't have to like it at all. But we have to understand that we can't always understand everything, especially when it comes to following Jesus. The seek his will part is also easy to understand, but it takes discipline to do so. We need to read and study our Bibles. We need to be connected to a church, a small group of people who can help us by challenging us and holding us accountable. And now the part we're waiting for is he will show us which path to take. So why doesn't God answer your prayer specifically? Why are there so many things that you're confused about God and doesn't seem to be given a clear answer? Well, remember, following Jesus is more about trusting than understanding. The path is a symbol for how we live our lives. Our way of living is supposed to look like Jesus. The way he thought, spoke, and acted is our example. That's a path to take. Those principles apply in our families, communities, schools, athletic practices, competitions, lunchrooms, hallways, bus rides, relationships, and more. But when you think about it, a lot of the stuff we learn by reading about Jesus is confusing. Very confusing. He cared about people that no one else cared about. Sometimes when people ask him questions, he answered with a question or a story. He said to love our enemies. How many people know that's hard to love your enemies? I mean, it's difficult. It's really difficult. He said to pray for people who persecute us. You know what persecution means? That's like beating somebody up, persecuting them, calling them names and stuff. But instead of reacting, we're supposed to pray for them. He said we're supposed to be like salt and light, which means we're supposed to be the light of the earth, show his light. He said that if we want to be the first, we have to be the last. But once again, following Jesus is more about trust than understanding. We have to trust that God's instruction in the Bible and the way Jesus lived out his obedience to God is the best way, even if it doesn't always seem like that to us at the time. We have to trust that God will help us when obeying and following is hard. And we have to trust that God cares about us more than we can possibly imagine. So, who's up for a challenge? Anybody up for a challenge? So, what would we do if our homes, neighborhoods, schools, churches, and community look like if those of us in this room started taking these 2 little verses in Proverbs seriously? Imagine if we say yes to following Jesus, even when they don't necessarily know where that'll lead us. What if we read our Bibles like it's provided, the most important information for our lives. Which it does if you want to know more about Jesus, the Jesus we're following. Imagine adults, coaches, parents, teachers, friends who receive respect from you guys. Now, imagine two who are usually lonely or bullied who now find people caring for them and loving for them. Now let's move from just imagining to making it happen. How do you do it? The same way you won 3 blind mice, one step at a time. How many of y'all ran through that maze? You ran through the maze?
No.
No. How'd you do it? How did you get through that maze? With help? Okay, with help. So with Jesus we have help. How many steps did you take at once? Did you do like 25 bunny hops?
No.
No, you did one step at a time. One step at a time. Let's move into, we'll do like a small group if you want to, and figure out what your first step is this week. Or we can do it as a big group. So what do y'all want to do this week that you can do a positive impact and follow Jesus? Something y'all can do this week. Want some ideas? I want some challenges back at me. So invite people to church. Do you need some flyers to pass out to people to invite them to church? Okay. Well, I will work on getting that done so you can have it by next week or Sunday. What's some other ones? Did I get everybody's phone number that has a cell phone? Did y'all write it down? If you didn't write it down, let me know and y'all can write it down. I have yours, Brooke. Yours is already on my phone. I have yours. Your mom gave me yours. My goal is to send y'all an encouraging text message every day. Or a Bible verse every day. And if y'all have a test or something coming up, let me know. Because I can pray extra for you guys and send y'all even more encouraging text. Or if you're going through something, what's up?
Can you send the answers to the test?
I don't want to be called to you failing your grade. I don't want to be, I can pray that God gives you the answers from all your studying. Alright, how easy or hard is it for you to trust God? Is it easy to trust God in situations, or is it hard? Hard? It probably depends on the situation you're in too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alright. What does it look like for you to trust God in your everyday life? You said last week that you trust God to go to sleep at night. And wake you up in the morning? He doesn't have to do that. Y'all have some pretty mighty faith and trust in those chairs you're sitting in. Because y'all are on the floor right now. What are some things that you just don't understand about God or following Jesus? Y'all have any, I don't understand them? Or how to follow them? Which one of these will you work on this week as you're stepping following the path God is showing you? 1, reading the Bible. 2, studying the Bible. 3, acting on someone you learned from the Bible recently, or allowing us to hold you accountable. 4? 1 and 4, reading the Bible and allowing us to hold you accountable. So